Namo Pho, Namo Fa, Namo Seng. Homage to the Buddha, homage to the Dharma, homage to the Sangha. Welcome back to our study of the booklet The Art of Keeping the Light, or in its original version, 48 Methods to Nien Pho. We are going to discuss section 19 of our booklet, section 32 of the original. In the past, we've seen first the section 1, which was really the basic methods of reciting the Buddha's name, and there are a bunch of different methods to really dive into and to get some concentration, to establish our practice. Then we got some advices on part 2, and recently we began part 3. And as I said in the beginning, part 3 supposes that one has practice before, that he has some serious root into this practice. We've been talking about the purity, the strength necessary in our recitation, and the importance of deeply listening, the importance of meditating on sound. We may have thought in the beginning, especially in part 1, when establishing the practice, that this practice was about recitating, and in reality it's about listening. It is about attention, cultivating attention, more subtle attention, always more. So we've seen that paying attention to sounds is a very subtle practice, and we've seen it in different ways, until finishing by recitating in the nature of our self-mind, just naturally listening to sound, the true sound of our true self. And that is a very high practice, very esoteric practice in a way, which one doesn't have to cultivate per se, because it will be the consequence of the right practice. Very naturally, every sound is the Buddha's word. And today we will kind of come back from that kind of esoteric practice to a more exoteric, more mundane, something that is more close maybe to our day-to-day life. We come back to earth, so it's more down to earth. That's the second part of the part 3 of this booklet. So this section is called Uninterrupted Recitation, and it goes on. Recite in the morning, recite in the evening, recite when you are at leisure, recite when you are busy, recite in clean places, recite in unclean places. There should not be a single thought which is not of the Buddha. Even if you have to entertain friends and serve guests every day, and thus have to interrupt your recitation, only vocal recitation should be interrupted, not mental recitation. Practicing with such constancy, you can easily achieve samadhi. So, the kind of recitation we are talking here is a more informal kind of meditation. It is about, in every occasion, in every place, to practice the repetition of the name. But it's important to integrate everything that we've seen. The point is to establish that golden circle we've talked about earlier. A golden circle of observation, of concentration and observation. Xi and Guan. An equilibrium. And the point is to keep our attention on our inner path, what is happening inside, to actually turn the light of attention, the light of the self-mind, as we've seen some sections ago, which is really the light of awareness inside, to turn the light around, which is a formula that is very known, used, especially in the Shurangama Sutra and its commentaries, which is very important in Chan Buddhism. So, we should only keep one single thought, one unique thought, to enter samadhi, to enter egolessness, and to attain cessation. What is cessation? In a lot of texts it's called stopping, and I think it's the case in this translation, by the way. It's called stopping. It is a very important concept in Chinese Buddhism. Cessation, actually it's one of the translations of nirvana. It's the cessation. Does it mean that we are dead? Not at all. It is cessation that is established through concentration. That is why the term zi or shi is sometimes translated as concentration and sometimes as cessation, sometimes as the flower and sometimes as the fruit, sometimes as the cause and sometimes as the consequence. That means that when you establish truly concentration, the consequence is cessation. Then cessation of what? I will tell you. It is cessation of thoughts, cessation of body sensations, and cessation, stopping, if you want, of breathing sensations. And that can be very frightening because no thoughts, no body sensations, no breath, that feels like dying. And it's a big door to pass through. So we can achieve cessation of our habitual thoughts and tendencies. That's possible. And we can achieve it by cultivating one single object. That's the practice, the most basic there is, recitation. And as we've seen, also a very subtle one when you try to do it fully. And it is also the kind of practice that is explained in this section, the uninterrupted kind of recitation. It is the oldest kind of Pure Land practice. It was really about recitating all the time, to be in the presence of the Buddha all the time, to keep him in our hearts, to be mindful of the Buddha. That's the very definition of Buddha Smriti, this kind of practice, keeping the Buddha at heart. And it's also a difficult one. So we've got to integrate it in our day-to-day life. And it really brings down the frontier between samsara and nirvana. It allows us to throw our usual way of seeing things and to have a new way of seeing things, which is full of light, full of knowing on this world. So we can see, as we've seen earlier, every single thing around us as a manifestation of the Buddhas. And we can see, ultimately, in the end, the Buddha as everything that is. It is a kind of sanctification of our day-to-day life, everything around us, in us and through us, by recitating constantly the Buddha's name in whatever activity. This very word is a Pure Land. We are in the presence of the Buddha in every activity. So that's really a subtle and encouraging practice. Now, next section of the text is recitation without sundry thoughts, and it is very linked to what we just said. So the text goes on saying, the absence of sundry thoughts is stopping, what I called cessation earlier. Stopping is the cause of samadhi. If you can put a stop to sundry thoughts, to deluded thoughts, to impure thoughts. So if you can put a stop to sundry thoughts, correct thoughts will naturally appear. Sundry thoughts fall into three categories: good, bad, and neutral. To eliminate all three is to eliminate sundry thoughts. The mind requires stillness. With stillness, neither good nor bad thoughts will arise. The mind requires clarity. With clarity, there is no neutral thoughts. There is no recitation, except recitation of the Buddha's name. Therefore, the mind is always still. In recitation, there is Buddha. Therefore, the mind is always bright and clear. So, there is a lot to unpack here again. Recitation here is seen as a kind of mean to attain the great calm of body, thoughts, and breath. They harmonize, and their activity just diminish until there is no thoughts, no body sensations, no breath. And that is called sensation. It practically disappears. And it opens, if we do the big step of not doing anything, of not nourishing our own fear of dying at that very moment, it opens to the very clear and vast samadhi. But it is just a mean to attain samadhi. Or is it? It is also a way to develop our faith in our own Buddha nature. Amitabha, pure light, pure life. That's the name of our nature. It is a kind of confidence, the kind of faith I'm talking about. It's a strong confidence, an inner and outer. Traditionally, in Zen, we use Huatu or Koan to enter Samadhi. To enter non-self. In some traditions, for example in the Tsautung or Soto tradition, It is just silent elimination, which is cause and consequence at the same time. They don't use this kind of methods, not in the same way. Anyway, the text points to the fact that even a good thought, even a neutral thought, is not what you want. It is about keeping one single thought, Amitofo, or Amitabha, or the name you are recitating, to be totally one with that name. So even that neutral thought is still too much, simply. It is still a toy. Which can bring attachment and repulsion, just to nourish again that same machine that we know. But as I said, a single thought is a technique that is leading us to a kind of natural concentration, to a natural diminution of our thoughts, without having to actually attach to them or trying to repulse them, to put them away. Originally, Zen did go directly to our true mind. No special technique, nothing. But with time, especially in Chinese Buddhism, Chinese Chan, they developed that technique, which is Hua Tu, especially in its relation to the Pure Land, which is a wonderful technique of keeping a single thought. Because we live in a degenerated age, and seeing directly into the trueness, the spaciousness of our own mind is very difficult. But don't get me wrong, that will be the consequence of that same practice. So, to cultivate one single thought actually allows to not produce other kinds of thoughts, any kind of thoughts. It allows to cultivate a kind of mind which is clear. So, don't try to cultivate the clarity or spaciousness of mind as something empty. You can actually fall into many traps, and caves of emptiness are traps on the path. They can be very very funny and enjoyable. That's not the point. This practice is not made to be enjoyable, even if there are very joyful moments on this path. So, mind and Buddha, through keeping a single thought centered on the Buddha, are just one. When we keep a single thought, we reside in the mind of every Buddha. We reside in their same nature, which is vast and open, and they all share the same being. We all share that same being. So we'll go on section 21 of our booklet, which is section 34 of the original. So it is again also called uninterrupted recitation. It says recitation, reciting the Buddha's name without interruption is visualization, and visualization is the cause of wisdom. The previous utterance of the Buddha's name has gone, the next has not come. The present utterance is not static. Practice visualization in this manner, clearly but without attachment. Without attachment but clearly. Proceeding continuously in this way, you will arrive at the truth that everything is made from mind alone. Buddha is mind, and mind is Buddha. So, this practice actually tells us to continue in the path of uninterrupted recitation, to try to actually recitate all the time, based on the understanding of what recitation really is and how it works, that we've looked into in this third part. And here we touch another specificity of the Pure Land School, really, which is the visualization part. And we have to understand that's very important in Chan, to understand the function of visualization. Is it really about seeing a Buddha perfectly in our minds? Maybe, but why? And how does that work? The text says, the previous utterance of the Buddha's name has gone, the next has not come. So it is really about this between two thoughts, this between two breaths. The nature of our true mind has that same taste, between two thoughts, between two breaths. Don't try to specially cultivate it, but know it. How is your mind between two thoughts, between two breaths? They are non-self mind, I don't know mind, beginner's mind if you want, bodhicitta mind. I particularly like the I don't know aspect, open aspect, between two thoughts. So really, visualization is to put a name and a practice into that. And eventually you will see that everything in this world, everything that appears, every form, has the same nature of that between a thought and another, of that silent which is not silent, between thoughts, that silence which is not silence, between two breaths. And the text says everything, you will see that everything is made from mind alone. But what kind of mind? Your intellectual mind? No. That points to what kind of mind. So we could say that after reaching cessation through concentration, and to continue humbly the practice without trying to separate us, without trying to add concepts, without trying to add anything, a single iota of me, myself, and I, to actually not add control and judgment, to actually dive totally in this practice, then we can let shine our inner light, our inner ability to shed light on our own darknesses. And we can continue in this way through cessation. And really that phase in the practice generally feels like a big swamp, because, well, when you try to practice sincerely, you feel you're almost dead, no thoughts, or almost no thoughts, almost no breath, almost no body sensation. It used to be fun, but now that you are really into it, everything has a kind of taste of mud in your mouth. But you get to go through it. It is not about you. Go beyond you. Samadhi is egolessness. So just practice and let manifest every Dharma freely, without trying to do anything with them. Because when every Dharma manifests freely, our true mind, our Buddhic nature, our Buddha nature, shines freely in the 10 directions. Makes me think about Huineng, our sixth patriarch, or about the Japanese Taotung master Daoyuan, in Japanese Soto master Dogen, said something like, to realize our mind is to forget it, and to forget it is to be one with all things. So it is really about returning the light of awareness to the self-mind, to our true mind. Return it and taste the true mind between two thoughts, between two breaths. But don't try to fix yourself only into that. Don't try to think that your true mind is only between two thoughts or between two breaths. Because when you let them, every Dharma, freely appear, then your true mind, your true light, shines naturally. So nothing is missing, really. When these sundry thoughts no longer arise, nothing is missing. Also, be careful. Don't try to actually suppress any thought. That's very important. No thoughts and no breath, no body sensation appears naturally. It's a natural consequence of a right practice. That's it. So practice, practice, practice. And be very clear to yourself. It's about practice. It's about strength in the practice. And if it takes you your whole life to just establish concentration, so be it. Accept it. It's also a game. It's a tragic game, but it's a game. Accept the game and play with it. Totally. Dive into the practice, totally. And don't let one single inch, just in case of, put yourself totally in the practice, otherwise you're losing your time. Just go have a beer. Amitofo.